have political strategy got to do strategy.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
President has nothing to declare.
Councillor Margarita Wright.
Moving on to agenda item 3 is to approve the minutes of the last meeting held on the 26th of September. We all agreed accuracy of those minutes? Okay. Moving on to receive any announcement from myself, the leader, or members of the cabinet. I do have an announcement. You'll be pleased to know it'll be short and sweet. Since my last cheque giving to the local charities and organisations, I have given out £1,650 to support 7 additional good causes, and they are Ticaddock Residents Association, Vale Plus, Vale Ways, Highlight Park Neighbourhood Watch, Tiramore District Scouts, RNLI Barry, National Coast Wash Association. This money will go a long way to support these local charities, and they have all expressed the gratitude for the money. I was also honoured to remember those who had lost their lives during the First World War, and to remember those who have also lost their lives since then. And it was a moving event on this particular year because it was the 100-year anniversary. I attended the Welsh National Remembrance Service along with the Barry ones as well. I have continued to support local organisations and charities in promoting the good work that they do, and I will continue to do so in the new year. Thank you. Going on to agenda item 5 is to consider the following notions of motion as submitted by Councillor Dr Ian Johnson and Stephen Willem. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak to the motion that's on the papers in front of you tonight. It's often said that work is a route out of poverty, but that simply can't be the case if you're not paid enough money to actually meet the living costs that you have. The Living Wage Foundation is an organisation independent of government which annually publishes a figure which it terms the Living Wage Foundation wage, or sometimes referred to as the real living wage, which is based upon the basket of goods and services that people are expected to spend in an average week. I've often said, those who've been here previously before 2017, and those who've listened to me in committees will often have heard me talk about the fact that the council here is a major local employer. They've heard me talk about the gender ratio of our staff and the gender pay gap, and they've heard me say that this council has a duty as that major employer to be paying the living wage. There are lots of differences, as people here will know, between my view of the world and the view of the Conservative Party. But I think that the work that has been undertaken by this council in the past 2 years should be noted and should be celebrated. I think they've done sterling work in removing and deleting a number of the low scale bands of pay, and for that lowest amount to be increased. And hopefully this council will agree that tonight under item 8A. It's one of the ironies of the way that our agenda is set up that this motion is taking place in advance of that later on. This motion not just looks at that amount of pay that people get. The living wage recommended from 1st of April is £9. The amount that will be suggested in item 8A is £9.18. But this is about actually signing up to become an accredited living wage employer. That means not just setting the figure, but also showing that we value our staff, having a badge of honour that we can show that will help with our staff retention and with our staff recruitment. It is a commitment to all of those conducting public services in the Vale of Glamorgan area in our name. I very much hope that this council tonight will follow the the work that's already been done in setting, or hopefully later on setting, a pay scale which meets the needs of the living wage, by also becoming a accredited member of the Living Wage Foundation, and showing our commitment to our staff. We've already done the work. I think we should take the credit for it as well. I hope that everybody in this council chamber tonight will support that. I will move the motion.
Councillor Hodges?
Can I formally second?
Councillor Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I fully support this motion. As some of you may be aware, I have previously been employed by the Vale of Glamorgan Council through agencies, and I just want to say how much a good wage will make staff feel valued and appreciated, and in turn increase their motivation and their productivity. When I was here, I've worked in several different departments over the course of 15 years at several different times, and the service we always try to give was always 100%, and I think that is always fair and only fair that it be reciprocated and shown by the employers. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Thank
Neil
you,
Thomas,
Mr.
that is.
Sit down.
Thank you, Mr. I would naturally support this motion as it stands, although I think there is something missing from it in terms of social work staff who are employed through agencies and so on, where they are doing waking night duties or sleep-in duties, which are not paid at anything like scale. And I would ask the Councillor Johnson to consider them as well, and maybe including them in the wording somewhere of this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Marnie?
Thank you very much. Yes, I've no idea how people actually survive on basic wage. It's an absolute and utter disgrace. However, I will give my yearly reminder of the hypocrisy of Plaid Cymru, who are the greatest supporters, have insisted that this country provides 0.7% of its budget to go to foreign aid to countries which have nuclear weapons programs, space programs, and then whining because there isn't enough money to pay our own people properly, a proper wage. We've also, of course, they're hell-bent at the moment in overturning the biggest political vote in British history to defeat Brexit. That's another £10 billion given away to other countries. It surely can't have escaped our notice also that with the large reduction of the immigration of EU nationals from Eastern European countries, that employment continues to sink in this, unemployment I should say,
Scrutiny Committee 12 months after that, and he was asking for it to be brought in by 2014, which obviously didn't happen. But following the approval of Cabinet on the 9th of October 2017, a decision was made to remove the spinal point 6 and 7 from the NJC pay scale. And this had the impact of raising the minimum hourly rate for staff from £7.78 to £7.90 per hour from the 1st of December last year. And this change was to ensure salaries were sustainably higher than the national living wage and move closer to the foundation living wage. Following the recent proposed changes to the pay structure, which I hope and anticipate that Council will approve tonight, the minimum hourly rate from the 1st of April will be, as has been said, £9.18 an hour, which is 18 pence per hour more than the foundation living wage. And therefore we have managed to reach our commitment to move closer and beyond the foundation living wage. The accreditation to the Living Wage Foundation is more than just paying staff and agency workers. We must also have a plan in place to pay our contractors a living wage. And we could do this, but we need to be mindful of a few facts first. The scale of our procurement, which is around £90 million of our £220 million revenue budget, goes on procuring goods and services. The budget position and the potential implications on our budget doesn't stop us having a plan, but we need to be mindful of the extent that we buy in services. To provide the range of services that this council does, there are many contracts in place, some of which are, for instance, provision of leisure centre services, highway maintenance work, major highway upgrades, including the 5 Mile Lane, the improvement of our school estate through the 21st Century Programme, and the provision of domiciliary and residential services, as Councillor Neil Thomas mentioned, to some of our most vulnerable citizens in our communities. It has not been possible to estimate the financial impact of gaining accreditation that would include these contracts. However, it would be reasonable to assume that the cost would run into millions of pounds. And when we look at the stark reality of our current financial position, it would be foolhardy to commit to a foundation living wage accreditation. But that will not stop us from keeping it in mind as we move forward. And I'll be delighted to agree to this if and when our finances allow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor MacArthur.
I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion by Councillor Johnson Williams that the Vale formally recognises from the 1st of April 2019 this council will pay all directly employed staff a wage that exceeds the foundation living wage, and the administration be congratulated on the progress made in moving so quickly to a position where all directly employed staff are paid a wage that exceeds the foundation living wage.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Gray.
I thought that the leader had summed up the debate, because if there was going to be an amendment, then our amendment should have been called before the summing up.
I believe the proposer of the motion sums up.
But okay, if you're going to allow it, then it's up to you and the chair. But in essence, what you're saying is the living wage would only apply to the employees of this council. And it's already been mentioned that it was asked of us to do it, and yes, we were asked to do it, and at that time, if you recall, it was going to cost us millions, whereas by the time we got to the end, it was costing 100,000, and it's the right thing to do, but I'm concerned that that is a negative of the proposal.
Under the Constitution, which is 4.216(3), any amendment to a motion must be relevant to the motion and will be either B, to leave out words and insert and add others, or. And this does not negate the motion, just which this amendment does not. So I've explained the motion and the amendment motion with the constitution, and then I will ask Dr. Johnson for a right of reply.
Could I confirm, am I having right of reply to the debate or a right of reply to the amendment initially?
You can do it for the amendment or for your own motion that you've proposed.
I believe I'm allowed to reply to the amendment and then finally to reply to the debate. Looking for clarification from the monitoring officer there.
So, according to the Constitution, Dr. Johnson, on 4.219b, if an amendment is moved, the mover of the original motion has the right to reply at the close of the debate on the amendment, but may not otherwise speak on it.
For clarification, that means that I'm able to speak to the amendment and then following the amendment taking place, speaking to the final debate, notwithstanding the fact that I still believe that the amendment effectively negates the purpose of the motion.
You only have a right to reply once, so if you take it now, that's only once. As per the Constitution.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak? Thank you. Let me speak to the amendment. It seems to me, and I agree for once, which is not always the case, that I agree with Councillor Johnson, that I think this actually negates the motion before us, because the motion before us says that this council becomes a formally accredited living wage employer with the Living Wage Foundation. And what it seems to me has been moved as an amendment is that the living wage will only apply to our employees. Now, if that's the case, then I think that negates the original substantive motion, because it can't therefore be formally accredited living wage employer. And it's as simple as that. So I'm not going to vote for the amendment if we get that far. I think the amendment is false, and I think it's just a negative.
I've already ruled that there will be a vote on the amendment, and as I've already said, it's not negated to the motion as per the Constitution. So I'm going to move for a vote. So unless Councillor Johnson wants his right to reply.
Well, if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak now, because I'm going to speak at some point, so I may as well speak now and say that the amendment to this motion, you might as well just have voted against the motion rather than put an amendment in, which frankly changes the whole nature of it. Yeah. The purpose of this motion is that we should become a living wage foundation payer and become accredited. The amendment says that we shouldn't. Essentially, that's the difference between the two. The one says that we should be looking to pay all of the staff, all of the people who deliver services within the Vale of Glamorgan under the aegis of the Living Wage Foundation. And I think that the way that the original motion is phrased, I think includes the comments that Councillor Thomas was trying to make regarding payments, because it does talk about developing policies to ensure the real living wage is paid to indirectly employed staff, in addition to those who are our own directly contracted staff. Councillor Collins, I think, makes the points very well earlier with regards to temp and temporary staff, office staff. I myself worked for this council through a temping agency back in the day, and it would have been nice to have been paid the proper living wage. It still would be nice for temps to be paid the proper living wage. And I think it's very disappointing that instead of looking at this amendment and creating an amendment which addresses some of the issues regarding payments to staff who are not directly employed, by considering how we could go to the Living Wage Foundation and how we can discuss these issues. I'm disappointed that we've been provided with an amendment that is self-congratulatory without actually dealing with the issue that's being tabled, which is that it goes beyond just our own staff. It includes all those people who are providing services for us. I don't understand, to be perfectly honest, why the leader and why the Conservative group have taken what could have been a very good news story tonight, where we will hopefully all agree to pay our own staff £9.18 an hour above the national living wage, above the Living Wage Foundation real wage, and turn this actually into a negative story. Because what you could have done tonight is said, we recognise this is difficult, we'll take this motion away, and we will go and talk to the Living Wage Foundation about how we can become an accredited employer and how we can ensure that everybody gets a good deal out of this. So to turn that on its head, to negate that motion, to wreck that motion, doesn't make any sense to me from a political perspective. This could be your big win. I was at no Citizens Cymru meetings as well. You know, this is great. It's a great thing that in 2 years alone you've been able to delete those scales and improve the pay of people working for us. But you could have tonight taken that commitment further for those other people who provide services for us, who are employed by us indirectly, in order to ensure that everybody who works for this council, directly or indirectly, is paid a living wage. I don't understand why you haven't taken that opportunity, and instead you've actually chosen to turn it on its head and make it into a bad thing. I would respectfully ask that Councillor McCaffrey and Councillor Gray consider whether this is really the motion or the amendment that they wish to push to a vote and to try and have through, because I don't think it reflects particularly well on the group if they wish to do that. It will be a matter for council if they wish to be self-congratulatory, whilst also leaving out a fair number of people who work for this council. I hope that in the coming seconds that will be reconsidered, and that the leader will think about, once again, about the motion that's in front of him, the unamended motion, and consider how he might wish to take that to the Living Wage Foundation and say, I have a mandate from my council to become an accredited employer, tell me how I best do it. Yeah. That's the choice that's in front of you now. You can either be satisfied with doing something right, or you can do something half right and leave an awful lot of people out in the cold a couple of weeks before Christmas.
Another amendment, or amendment to the amendment.
Withdrawn, but unless it's withdrawn with the consent of the... It can be withdrawn with the consent.
Councillor McCaffrey?
If the leader is happy, I'll withdraw the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw the amendment.
Is the chamber happy to withdraw the amendment?
Yes.
Leader?
I move further amendment. And I take on board exactly what you're saying, Councillor Johnson, but your motion says that the Vale of Council becomes a formally accredited living wage employer, and for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, I don't think that can happen. So my amendment is that the Vale Council works towards becoming accredited living wage employer with a Living Wage Foundation, and commits to paying all direct employees the real living wage, as well as developing policies to ensure that the real living wage is paid indirectly to employed staff.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I don't think we can. I don't think we can agree to the.
Can we take a vote on this? We're going to be here all night.
He's going to have to accept it.
I'm going to get the managing director to read out the amended motion.
The amendment reads that the Vale Council works towards becoming a formally accredited living wage employer with the Living Wage Foundation and commits to paying all direct employees the real living wage, as well as developing policies to ensure that the real living wage is paid to indirectly employed staff.
Councillor Johnson?
So I'm happy to accept that amendment as proposed, and we'll hope that the leader will bring a report back to full council to inform us of progress when progress is made.
Yeah.
Assuming that it is supported by the council tonight.
Okay. Right, we shall now vote for the amended motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. All those against? And no abstentions. That amended motion is passed. I've been advised we need to take a vote on the original motion. No?
On the same motion.
On the same...
Which becomes a substantive.
It becomes a substantive.
Yeah.
Can I just remind who's the chair of the meeting and not shout out at me? Thank you.
We have to vote. Becomes the substantive motion.
Okay, we have to vote on the substantial... the leader's motion. So, the substantive motion. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed. Okay, moving on to the second notion of motion is from Councillor Perks, and I believe is seconded by Councillor Wilson. Oh, there's a change. Councillor Thomas is seconded, that's okay. Councillor Perks?
Thank you. Hopefully this one will be a little less, but I won't bet my life on it. Basically, what I want people to consider today, members to consider today, is the asking Welsh Government to enforce a ban on third parties, dealers selling puppies in Wales. This sort of first came to be highlighted sort of in December 2017 when vet Mark Abraham of Pup Aid and supported by All Party Parliamentary Group for Dog Welfare, chaired by Lisa Cameron MP, put forward Lucy's Law, which basically asks for the selling of puppies by third party dealers to be banned. At the moment, third-party dealers are licensed, but if we think of a license as in you can license people to sell alcohol, you can license people to sell cigarettes, things like that. This is actually animal welfare that we're talking about here. We're talking about the dogs that are breeding the puppies and the conditions that they're kept in. Wales has the biggest concentration of puppy farms in the UK. We need to think about the conditions that the puppies are kept in. A lot of the dogs are kept in. A lot of profit is made out of this. Last year they reckoned that about 80,000 puppies were sold through third-party dealers. So basically what I'm asking the members for is to write to Welsh Government asking them to enforce a ban on third-party dealers to hopefully bring into some sort of regulatory conditions into the farming of puppies, to actually end the farming of puppies at some stage. So far there's 11 councils within Wales that have taken the opportunity to pass a motion on the banning of the end of third-party dealers within our area and Wales as a whole. Thank you.
Leader? You've second, yeah? Okay.
Just briefly then, in seconding this motion, I'd just like to say many puppies are sold in an unhealthy, unwell condition. This causes distress to the new owners and can result in huge vet bills, or the animal having to be put down. People need protection from these unscrupulous, selfish, callous and uncaring predators who seek to inflict suffering for the sake of selfish profiteering, and I would urge all to support this motion.
Councillor Thomas, John Thomas.
Right one this time. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion proposed by Councillor Perks asks that either the leader or managing director write to Welsh Government to act through legislation, if possible, to implement such a ban as a matter of urgency. Can I say, and I'm not trying to stop anybody else speaking, but I'm happy to agree to write the letter, and we'll do so as soon as it's confirmed who the responsible minister is after the current reshuffle. I'd like to point out that I will call for an outright ban rather than a licensing regime, as the latter would put a far greater burden on this authority in administration and taking enforcement action, and I'm quite happy to share the letter with all elected members.
Anyone else would like to discuss the motion? Oh, Councillor Bailey.
Can I just thank the members for bringing forward this important motion? I too hope that there will be cross-party support on such an important issue. It may interest members and members of the public gallery to know that there's actually a short debate being held this evening in the National Assembly for Wales, which has been brought forward by local Assembly member Andrew Arty-Davis. So hopefully everyone will support this motion.
So I shall now move to a vote of the motion. All those in favour? I think that motion is passed. Just to procedural, all those against? And any abstentions? No. Moving on to item 7, which is a report of the Monitoring Officer and Head of Legal and Democratic Services. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a housekeeping report, as a lot of mine tend to be, on behalf of the Monitoring Officer. It seeks to provide an additional delegation to all directors to amend existing operational managers' reporting arrangements to a different head of service within their respective directorates, and to extend the delegations in line with paragraph 4, bracket Roman 2, of the report of the Head of Neighbourhood Services and Transport Operational Manager, Engineering, only where indicated in the report of the Engineering Manager - Environment. Riveting stuff, isn't it? Subject to one amendment, that being the reference to the word section in the report in paragraph 424 should be amended to paragraph. There was a typographical error in the report. But subject to that being amended from the word section to paragraph, I would, so that it reads as follows: to determine, including determination by the Engineering Manager - Environment, applications made under Schedule 3, paragraph 11 of the Food and Water Management Act 2010, I recommend that the changes to the relevant officer delegations, as set out in the report, be approved and the Council's constitution be amended accordingly. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favour of the one recommendation? Okay. That's unanimous. Agenda item number 8 is to consider the following proposal from the Executive in relation to the Council's policy framework and budget. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Starting off with 8A, which is a new NJC single status pay structure. We've already spoken a little about this this evening. The report, which went to Cabinet on the 19th of November, explained that following the previous Cabinet report on the 17th of September and then the Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of September, work has progressed significantly over the past couple of months to progress the new NJC pay structure. Agreement was reached to proceed with option 5 of the previous report, and the following actions have taken place. Full consultation has taken place with approximately 4,000 staff affected by the proposed pay structure. Roadshows, drop-in sessions facilitated by Human Resources and the recognised trade unions were held at a number of venues across the Vale for staff to attend. The details are in the report. An external website was created to ensure staff who did not have access to the intranet could have access to further information. And a presentation was produced and circulated which explained to staff and managers how staff would move from the current pay structure to the new pay structure, and this was included as an appendix. As part of recent pay changes, spinal points 6 and 7 have already been removed, which was in December 2017, from the current pay structure, which means that the current minimum hourly rate for staff on NJC terms and conditions is £8.62. From April 2019, the minimum hourly rate will be £9.18 per hour and is now confirmed as being above the voluntary foundation living wage, which was announced on the 5th of November 2018 as £9 per hour. Most importantly, the amendment to the grading structure will enable equal pay legislation to be met. It will also improve the gender pay gap as a high percentage increases towards the lower end of the grading structure, which are predominantly held by females. And the recommendation to Council is that the new draft pay structure is approved by full Council and implemented from the 1st of April 2018, and I so move. 2019, sorry. Backdated.
Second that.
All those in favour of the reference to Cabinet? Okay. Any against? Okay, that goes through. Moving on to A, B, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the Senior Management Issues, Performance and Development and Human Resources and Organisational Development Division. Council on the 18th of July 2018 considered a report on the management of the Human Resources and Organisational Development Division and resolved to progress with an approach which would see the two posts of Head of Human Resources and Organisational Development and Head of Performance and Development combined into a single Head of Service post. Consultation has taken place with relevant staff and the recognised trade unions, and further consideration has been given to the issues relating to capacity, particularly given the work issues as outlined in the report, including reshaping services, staff engagement, service transformation, and in ensuring effective working relationships with the WAO and the trade unions. It has been concluded that the creation of a single senior head of service post would result in a considerable loss of resilience and capacity at a time when there is increasing emphasis on the need to deliver on a number of fundamental and wide-ranging areas. Further work has been undertaken and a proposed structure is indicated on the attached appendix and was reported to Cabinet in November. In summary, the proposal now involves the retention of the post of Head of Human Resources and Organisational Development, reporting directly to the Managing Director, and this will not be a Senior Head of Service role. The existing post of Head of Performance and Development will be retained and will report directly to the Managing Director rather than to the Head of Service as previously. The existing post of Operational Manager Human Resources will be deleted, and as a result the Human Resources Business Partnership Team will report directly to the Head of Human Resources and Organisational Development. The Health and Safety and Wellbeing function will report to the Operational Manager Employee Services, and the grade of this post will change from OM2 to OM1, and that's subject to a HAY job evaluation as appropriate. As the previous report, the Council indicated that a further report would only be required if there were substantial changes to the proposals. This report is presented to Council on that basis. And so move.
All those in favour of the reference for Cabinet? And any against? Okay, let's go through. Next one is 8C, Council Tax Reduction Scheme.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is the, as the Mayor said, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme for 2019-20. Approval is sought to confirm the readoption of the Council Tax Reduction National Scheme with discretions for 2019 to 2020. There are two sets of regulations governing the Council Tax Reduction Scheme. One of these established a single national framework scheme which would be imposed on any council that failed to adopt its own scheme. The second of these sets out the national requirements that each billing authority has to satisfy, and also enabled additional areas of local discretion that authorities might wish to implement. Welsh local authorities have until the 31st of January each year to adopt a scheme exercising any of the discretions permitted under the prescribed requirements. This requires a decision by full council. If the authority fails to adopt a council tax reduction scheme by that date, the default scheme would apply. It is proposed that Cabinet is recommending to Council that the adoption of the discretions allowed in previous years for the year 2019-20, and these were outlined in the body of the report which Cabinet considered on the 3rd of December. And so Cabinet recommends to Council that the Council Tax Reduction Scheme and Prescribed Requirements Wales Regulations and the Council Tax Reduction Scheme Prescribed Requirements and Default Scheme Regulations 2014 be adopted. That any amendments to regulations made by the Welsh Government are reflected in the scheme. That the national scheme is adopted with the following discretions. Firstly, that the Council should continue to allow extended payments up to a maximum of 4 weeks. Secondly, that the Council should continue to disregard war widow and war disablement pensions in assessing income for council tax reduction. And thirdly, that the Council should continue to allow backdated reductions for a period of up to 26 weeks. I so move.
Second.
All those in favour of the reference from Cabinet? And any against? Okay, that goes through. Moving on to agenda item 9, which is to inform the Council of the use of the urgent decision procedure under Article 1414 of the Constitution about the provision of sanitary products in schools in the Vale of Glamorgan, and this is for noting.
I move we note, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Moving on to questions from councillors, agenda item 10. And the first question is from Councillor Ian Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Dr Johnson, good progress has been made on taking forward the Dinas Powys bypass operation and other sustainable transport improvements. The review group appointed to consider the WellTag Stage 2 draft report in respect of improving strategic transport in Dinas Powys met on the 2nd of October 2018. The review group determined that further traffic modelling work is necessary for the Dinas Powys bypass operations before any decision can be taken as to which improvement schemes can be taken forward to the next stage of the transport appraisal process. My office has recently submitted an in-year funding application for 2018-19 of £80,000 to Welsh Government to progress the further studies necessary to complete the Stage 2 WellTag assessment. I was advised on the 30th of November this year that disappointingly we were unsuccessful in obtaining this funding from Welsh Government, and the leader has subsequently personally written to Ken Skates to ascertain why we were unsuccessful on this occasion, and a response to this is awaited. In the light of this, I have requested my officers to prepare a report for Cabinet for January 2019, which will consider the work undertaken to date on this project, the recommendations of the review group, and the options for financing the outstanding WellTag Stage 2 work suggested as a consequence of the recent review group meeting which was held on the 2nd of October. I'm optimistic that, subject to securing the necessary funding for this additional work, the WellTag Stage 2 study can be completed and funding sought from Welsh Government for the full business case, that is Stage 3 of the WellTag process. A dedicated website for transport improvements in Dinas Powys is shortly to be launched, and this will contain information to keep the public informed of this important project.
Supplementary.
Thank you for that response, Cabinet Member. You said that there was to be a Cabinet report in January 19. Now, back in October, the leader said that the report that had gone to the committee would be subject to public consultation so everyone has a chance to have their say. Can you tell us when the report that was given to that committee in steering group on October the 2nd, when that will be published so that the public can see it?
I think we will hold the meeting in January 2019 first, and then we can consider when we will go to the public on that. And also, of course, I have mentioned our website, which we are producing.
Moving on to question 2, which is from Councillor Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. This question relates to the Syrian Vulnerability Persons Resettlement Scheme. The Council gave a commitment nearly 3 years ago to work regionally with Cardiff City Council on the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme and to settle 4 families each year for the first 2 years. This was later extended to 3 years. Since the start, 11 families, that is 46 individuals, have been housed and supported in the Vale of Glamorgan, and the 12th family of 4 individuals is due to arrive on the 11th of December. Yesterday, thank you. Yeah. Support was given by the Council to the community sponsorship group Croeso Penarth, which settled 1 family in September 2018, consisting of 6 individuals. In addition, the Children's Services team in the Council has accepted 2 unaccompanied children under the DUB scheme during the period.
Supplementary.
Thank you very much for that response. This week marks the 70th anniversary of the signing of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and it was Human Rights Day on Monday this week. Can the Cabinet Member confirm that this Cabinet and this Council will continue to operate at the same level in resettling 4 families per year for the remainder of this period?
Yes, we've already made that commitment, and I will reaffirm the commitment.
Question 3 is from Councillor Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dr. Johnson, for the question. I'm pleased to report a great deal of progress has been made over the last 6 months. The Council's Welsh in Education Strategic Forum has established a subcommittee consisting of officers from across the Council and volunteers who have been engaged in establishing an engagement strategy reflective of the needs of its stakeholders. This strategy will focus on leveraging effective engagement as well as ensuring opportunities for members of the public to hear about what's on offer for families and to consider the benefits of bilingualism when making any decision regarding learning provision. There are also a number of existing examples of best practice regarding the promotion of the Welsh language opportunities through the Council's adult and community learning teams Learn Welsh in the Vale initiative. The promotional work this team has done through such media such as Twitter and Facebook has seen a year-on-year growth in the take-up in Welsh for the adult programmes. The Learn Welsh in the Vale team also offers programmes such as Club Ni, a weekly Welsh language homework club for young people held at Palmerston Centre. The team also works in collaboration with our partners such as Urdd, Myddian Maithrin and Mentor Bro Morganog in promoting Vale and collaborative services through partners' own media channels. Promotion is also done with the support of Welsh medium schools who share the relevant posts through their own social and traditional media channels, and these schools have been working closely with officers on engagement and promotional opportunities and objectives on a termly basis. With regard to future activity, as a starter, I would refer you to the Council's Welsh Language Promotion Strategy available online, which contains a specific action plan for activities across the Council, including education linked to the Welsh language and the anticipated impact. The most recent activity I would draw your attention to is a newly published report for Cabinet seeking permission to consult on establishing a new site for Ysgol St Barach, which will increase the capacity of Welsh medium education in Barry by an additional 210 places, an activity reflective of both national and local priorities.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that response. It's very heartening to hear the breadth of work that's taking place, and I was of course very interested by the report that's going to Cabinet next week, because we're all aware of the constraints upon Ysgol Sant Barach and its lack of canteen, etc., which is criticised by Estyn. Would it be possible for the Cabinet member and officers to meet with all councillors that represent the waterfront area once this report has gone to Cabinet, to discuss the implications for that area.
Thank you. The Barry Waterfront Local Residents Association and the Council have already engaged and will be discussing the proposal with regards to the school and the opportunities available regarding the benefits of bilingualism. Work is also being undertaken through the Central South Consortium in establishing a model for transitioning into Welsh medium education and the associated immersion support to aid pupils in that process. In addition, the role of West Forum and its forthcoming engagement activities supporting not only these primary age pupils in Welsh medium education, but also their families and adult learners through the excellent work of our ACL and Learn Welsh in the Vale teams. This will be an important aspect to engagement and promotion. The holistic approach for learners of all ages, alongside the access and promotion to council services through Welsh language, will be key in ensuring we contribute effectively to Welsh Government's Cymraeg 2050 strategy of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050.
Question 4 is from Councillor Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Johnson, the fly tipping data resulting from incidents of fly tipping reported through our contact centre or website, which we maintain to provide our returns to Welsh Government, does not classify the nature of the fly tip material, but would include reports of black bags believed to have been fly tipped. The reported incidents held on our system for the 3 months prior and the 3 months following the September the 3rd black bag restriction policy being introduced is as follows. June 2018, 27. July 2018, 25. August 2018, 9. And to save you counting them up, that's 61. In September 2018, 27. October 2018, 39, and in November, that's last month, 33, which is a total of 99. So the total number of reported incidences prior to introduction was 61, with 99 being reported afterwards. Now, whilst this would appear to show a trend, the period is really too short to draw any firm conclusions. Also, for the same September to November 3-month period in 2017, the number of reported incidences was 107, 8 incidences higher than this year's period with the restricted black bag collections. It should be noted that excess black bags left uncollected outside a resident's property are unlikely to be reported via our contact centre's fly tipping. However, the general levels of compliance with the 2-bag rule has been excellent. In the 3 months since the introduction of the scheme, our officers have only recorded 117 incidences of residents who have breached the rule on more than one occasion. And our officers are now progressing actions against these residents in accordance with the restricted residual policy which was agreed by Cabinet in July this year, sorry.
Supplementary.
Thank you very much for that information. I think you're, from a quantitative evaluation perspective, it's very difficult to only have a couple of months. I think it's more anecdotal stuff will tell us ultimately whether it's worked or not. Could I just clarify, obviously we're going into the Christmas period. Can you assure us that this will not be negatively impacting upon collection over the Christmas period?
We have said that we will not be restricting residents over the Christmas period and the New Year. But what I was hoping was, in your original collection, you would have congratulated the council and the residents as well for the performance as a result of the black bags, where the increase in curbside recycling has gone up by 8%, the increase in food waste recycling by 19%, and a 31% reduction in the black bag weight.
Question number 5 is from
He's not here, but I'll answer his question anyway. No. I was going to ask Mark if he was interested in a job, but unfortunately he's not here to answer, so leave it at that.
Question 6 is again from Councillor Wilson to the Cabinet Member for Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and in his absence, thank you for your question, Mr. Wilson. This relates to CCTV in Penarth. There are at present 13 CCTV cameras in Penarth in total, and currently 3 of these cameras are not functioning and are awaiting repair. I might say they're now all getting very, very old. A member of the community safety team at the council met with the Penarth Business Group on the 26th of November, along with the South Wales Police, to discuss the current situation of CCTV in Penarth. Their understanding was that all cameras were out of service, but it was explained to them that this was not the case, and whilst there are occasional technical problems, they are reported as soon as possible so that they can be rectified. Advice was also given to the businesses for them to consider investing in their own CCTV, which would be beneficial and relatively inexpensive. I am advised that the group were very receptive and found the meeting and the information most useful.
Question 7 is another one from Councillor Wilson to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Winston for his question in his absence. As I've indicated previously, work has been undertaken to assist the pavilion to operate on a sustainable footing so that it can be enjoyed by residents and visitors well into the future. I can confirm that the Managing Director and the Head of Finance met with the outgoing Chairman and the new Manager of Penarth Arts and Crafts Limited at the end of September. At that time, an interim Chairman was to lead the board for a few months, whilst a permanent appointment was to be agreed. At that point, it was confirmed that the new manager was already making changes at the pavilion, which I hope will make a positive impact on the financial situation at the pavilion. It was also reported at the meeting the pavilion was experiencing increased footfall as a result of the changes made at the cafe, and the changes made to the cinema viewings being made available also.
Question 8 is from Councillor Burnett to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Burnett. I'm not quite sure which key sites are being referred to in the question, but however, the term enabling housing is generally used to refer to sites where it might be necessary to include some element of residential use to achieve a financially viable development, and to enable to deliver sustainable mixed-use schemes subject to planning policy, having regard to the long-term future of the site and well-being of future generations Act.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. I think most people have got used to the idea with the successful pump house renovation that about 10 apartments in that development was acceptable. Residents have voiced concern of the proposals with pre-application consultation of 40 plus homes planned on the important goods shed site, which was previously earmarked for leisure tourism. With that in mind, obviously you can't comment on that. Will you reassure residents that we're not expecting hundreds of enabling housing units on Nell's Point, should you be looking to develop that?
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. Of course. Nell's Point is such a premium site. We are currently working very hard to market it to the leisure and tourism industry. Whilst we may have to accept a small amount of housing to get it enabled. I can assure you it will be an absolute bare minimum. When we looked to market it previously, there was £1 million shortfall with the Warner bid. We've recently had some work done, and we've been to a marketing event with Visit Wales, and there seems to be that £1 million hole in the budget. So there will probably need to be some enabling housing on Nels Point, but I can assure you it will be a bare minimum. We will ensure that the hotel and leisure facilities take precedent, and they will be in the prime position. So you have my assurance of that.
Question 9 is from Councillor Burnett to the Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett, for your question. I think that you will find that your question is extremely misleading. You infer that Scrutiny Committee input has been, and I quote, disregarded without any justification or explanation. If you read the Cabinet minutes, you will find that this isn't the case.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Leader. For clarification, the minutes, I have reviewed the minutes, both of the 30th of July with parking and the 15th of October in relation to Llancarvan. They are long and detailed, but they actually fail to discuss the specifics of the references from the 3 scrutiny committees. This has not actually been raised by me, this has been raised by residents to me who've actually asked me, what is the point of scrutiny if references are disregarded? Can I ask that future references from scrutiny committees specifically address the points raised? One, to give you a bit of clarification, with the learning and culture one, they actually differentiated between engagement and consultation. That was not dealt with by Cabinet or in the minutes, and I attended every one.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. I can assure you that the Scrutiny Committee do consider very seriously anything, the Cabinet consider anything very seriously that comes from Scrutiny Committee. I'll take on board what you say and obviously look at that when anything further comes to Cabinet from Scrutiny.
Question 10 is from Councillor Burnett to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Burnett. Officers have looked at various schemes aimed at increasing the use of the pool cars outside of normal working hours. Unfortunately, the increased costs of insurance and administration to provide such arrangements for individual members of the public are currently prohibitive. The pool's car scheme relies on reception staff at our main offices to administer keys and to monitor vehicle tracking data to ensure maximum vehicle utility, and reception staff undertake this work for a marginal cost when undertaking their other daily duties. These staff work over a 5-day period currently, so an additional and specific administration arrangement would have to be put in place for hiring out vehicles outside of normal working hours, and this is the biggest barrier to any such operation. Partnering with another public organisation such as the police or health boards is more of a realistic option, and the possible requirements and benefits from such arrangements are being considered.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. We hear a lot of talk in the Council about innovation and of strong communities with bright futures. There are numerous examples around the country, quite often of social enterprise models, which the Council's been discussing a lot recently, where such schemes have allowed residents to downsize to 1 or even no cars. Seems to fit with our aspirations for well-being of future generations. Can I ask for the research done to date to be put together into a scrutiny report or a report to scrutiny, so that scrutiny can have a full discussion on whether or not this is actually viable?
In your question, you said that Council is to be congratulated on the financial success of the pool scheme. And of course, you are well aware of the financial situation which the council is in with the income that we receive. When we allocate pool cars, our drivers have to go through, our staff driving quality is assessed. We monitor the actual pool cars themselves. We know who's going to drive them. We can therefore arrange insurance. And I'm not happy that the fact we could let these cars out for members of the public when we won't have assessed their driving capabilities and we won't have the details to apply for insurance. So I'm not really happy for it to put forward, but if you want to put a request in writing to our officers, we will look at it later.
Question 11 is from Councillor Burnett to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Burnett. If Councillor Burnett wishes to assist this council in dealing with the effects of continuing austerity, then I would respectfully suggest that she speaks to her political colleagues in Welsh Government to ensure that this council and others in Wales receive a greater proportion of the funding being made available to the devolved governments by Westminster. The extremely tough decisions that this administration is now required to take are a direct result of our poor funding position. If we do not continue to raise funds and reduce costs wherever possible, then our residents will suffer through reductions and in some cases the total discontinuation of important frontline services. In terms of car parking charges, I'll remind you, Councillor Burnett, that this council has taken no decisions on this matter, and when I propose a new car parking policy for this council in the new year, you will see that I've taken into account the thousands of comments received via the comprehensive public consultation exercise undertaken. The policy should not damage our disadvantaged communities or any specific gender, neither will it detrimentally affect any individual or group with protected characteristics defined under the equalities legislation. It will, however, assist in increasing parking for those who wish to spend money in our town centres. It will also reduce congestion and recover costs sufficient to better protect our highways and transport services at this time of continuing austerity.
Supplementary.
Thank you. It was unfortunate that the Leader should turn that into more of an attack rather than an answer. The same report from the UN rapporteur talked about the 49% real terms cut in local government funding in England since 2010. Actually, Welsh Government has protected local authorities, although, you know, I agree, we're in difficult times. Those cuts haven't been as huge in Wales. At a recent conference, I heard the Auditor General in Wales stating that he will specifically look for examples of impact on equality of local authority policies. When this proposal is brought back to Cabinet, would the Leader ensure that the equality impact assessment is robust and comprehensive, as it will be difficult to see how to charge an hour's income every day to poorly paid shop workers can be justified?
Short answer, yes.
Question 12 is from Councillor Perks to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Perks, for your question on helping tenants with universal credit. In order to prepare council tenants for the introduction of universal credit in the Vale in October 2018, the Money Advice Team organised and attended 27 community-based events as part of the Universal Credit Awareness Drive. This included a rural Vale show, stopping at a number of small villages, attending safeguarding weekly events, going along to summer events such as the Safer Vale Day and the Mayor's Barbecue, as well as attending residents' board meetings. At all of these events and meetings, tenants were made aware that home visits could be arranged for them to see a member of the Money Advice Team or an individual basis to receive advice and assistance with maximising their income, budgeting and preparing for universal credit. In 2017 to 18, 1,306 home visits were carried out, and from April 2018 to date, 582 have been completed. In addition, the Council has commissioned third sector organisations through the Supporting People programme grant funding to provide a number of drop-in services across the Vale. 2 of the weekly sessions will take place in the job centres, and whilst they deal with all housing related support issues, the number of universal credit queries has increased as people transfer to the benefit. And it might be helpful for councillors for me to actually list these where the drop-in sessions will take place. The first one being the Venerable Family Drop-In at Golwg Caredig, Gladstone Road, which is held every Monday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Penarth Job Centre Plus, Charnwood House, Plymouth Road, Penarth, the second Monday of every month, 9:30 to 4:30. The Barry Library in King Square, Barry, has an event every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There is an over 55s drop-in Golwg Caredig, Gladstone Road, Barry, which is held every Wednesday, 10:30 to 12 p.m. Bethel Baptist Church, Commercial Street, Lantrip Major, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. The Barry Job Centre Plus, 9 Holden Road, Barry, has an event on the first Thursday of every month, 9:30 to 4:30. The Gathering Place at 1 Flemington Road, St Athan, the first and the third Thursday of every month, 10:30 to 12:30. The Unit 8 Business Service Centre, 2 Hood Road, Barry, has a meeting on Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 3:30. Make no apologies for reading those out, because I'm sure all of you, and if anybody does want me to clarify that, I'd be very happy to give you some more. And I can confirm that the Council will continue to be sympathetic towards any tenants who are suffering hardship and work with them to agree a repayment pattern should they fall into arrears. When they go into universal credit, as long as they keep the housing income team updated on their circumstances and maintain any repayment agreements. Money advice and ongoing housing related support funding by the Supporting People's Programme grant, which includes assistance with making a claim if required, will also remain available to tenants on request.
Supplementary.
Thank you for the comprehensive reply and also all the details. I think that would be really helpful to our council tenants and to other people who are on universal credit. I wondered, could I ask that councillors are kept up to date with sort of the statistics that the different teams keep within the Vale of people who are claiming universal credit? So, you know, sort of if they're keeping information on how much they're in arrears and different things like that, if we could, councillors could be furnished with such reports on a regular basis, please.
Yes, I can reassure you that actually the officers are very mindful of the likely difficult circumstances, bearing in mind it is between now and Christmas that this programme is being rolled out, and I can assure you they are monitoring it very, very carefully to safeguard not only the interests of the people that are affected by it, but also the council, because obviously we don't want to be in a position where we'd be chasing a lot of people for arrears. It is much better to help them and assist them at this stage, and I can assure you that is the uppermost commitment from both myself, who actually meet every week on this, to ensure that we minimise and help, which is quite a difficult situation that some people will find them in. So I will be mindful of that and keep you fully informed.
Question 13 is from Councillor Bailey to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bailey, for your question. The question is on the biomass plant. Yes, I am happy to pay tribute to the work of DIAG. I can also confirm that this council and I have met and communicated regularly with representatives on the issue of the biomass plant to ensure that they are fully aware of the position of this council. I can see Mr Clark sat in the public gallery there, and I've spoken to him and met him on a number of occasions regarding this.
Supplementary.
Thank you for that answer, Leader, and perhaps you'll join me in lobbying the Welsh Government for an early Christmas present for Barry residents. Back on the 14th of February, the Labour Minister indicated she was minded to order an environmental impact assessment. That seems an age ago now. In fact, in March, she promised to take a decision as soon as possible. Well, to quote the Smiths, how soon is now? And will you join me in encouraging the Labour members in this chamber to put some pressure back on the Minister to ensure that we get that decision before it's Christmas 2019?
Yes, I certainly will.
Question 14 is from Councillor Bailey to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Bailey, I would refer you to the detailed response on this matter that I provided earlier to Dr Johnson. So I don't really want to read out all the figures again unless you specifically want me to.
Just a very quick supplementary then, just to ask you to restate the Cabinet's commitment not to change the frequency of black bin collections between now and the rest of the administration.
We have no proposals at all to change the frequency of black bag collection. We're currently collecting every 2 weeks, and we intend continuing this.
Question 15 is from Councillor Carroll to the Cabinet Member for Regulatory and Legal Services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, George, for your question. In April 2015, Cardiff Council, Bridgend County Borough Council and the Vale of Glamorgan Council signed a joint working agreement for the provision of regulatory services across the 3 council areas. The document created the Shared Regulatory Service and the Joint Committee. In accordance with the Joint Working Agreement, the SRS is required to produce an annual report that covers the operational and financial performance of the service for the preceding year. The annual report covers the period from 1st of April 17 to 31st of March 18 and was approved by the Joint Committee on the 19th of June this year. That report is available on the Council's website. Members will be pleased to hear that over the last 3 years, the SRS has consolidated service delivery in accordance with the agreed standards. The requisite financial savings have been delivered in year 3, but more demands are being placed upon the service at a time of reducing resources. As with any law enforcement agency, new legislation and new policy developments continue to place greater responsibilities on the service, and with those responsibilities, greater expectations. The likely consequences arising from the Grenfell disaster, changes to the public health regime, the increased exploitation of vulnerable people, the challenges of improving air quality, the increase in the number of major commercial events cannot be underestimated. In the next 3 years, the service's principal challenge is to continue to deliver high-quality services and to help our partners manage their respective financial pressures. And I will be working closely with the Head of Service and the Joint Committee to consider these matters to ensure the health and well-being of those who live, work and visit the Vale. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and I thank the Deputy Leader for his answer. Mr Mayor, the scrap metal market is a legitimate trade, but in recent months we have seen a spate of incidents, including drain cover thefts within my own ward of Landock and indeed neighbouring wards, and also unlicensed scrap metal collectors operating within our communities. Will the Deputy Leader please provide an update on the work the Council's own licensing department are doing, and indeed the work we're doing with other neighbouring authorities to ensure that all those engaged in the scrap metal market are properly regulated, and the work we're doing to ensure that any criminal behaviour can be stamped out?
Well, thank you, George. Scrap metal dealers who buy, sell or store scrap metal are required by law to obtain a licence from the Council. The Council inspects scrap metal dealers and to ensure that they are complying with the requirements of their licence. The most pertinent being that, firstly, a dealer must not receive scrap metal from a person without verifying their name and address. A dealer must not buy scrap metal for cash. A dealer must keep a record of all scrap metal received, including a description, including the type, form, condition, weight, and any identifying marks, previous owners, or distinguishing features that are indicated on that scrap metal. They must record the date and time. They must record the registration mark of the vehicle that it was delivered in or on. They must record the full name and address of the person from whom it was received, and the full name of the person who makes the payment acting for the dealer. And these records must be kept for a minimum of 3 years. I'm sorry to hear about the recent thefts of drain covers, but I can advise that our officers are at present working with the police to determine if those drain covers have been processed by any scrap metal dealer in our shared regulatory service region. Colleagues in the rest of Wales have also been made aware of the thefts, and it will be part of any inspection programme. They will monitor the receipt of such items. And I'm sorry I can't give you any more assurance, but that we're doing all we can to run this to ground. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 11, which is questions from the public. I've decided to have these as read due to the length of some of the questions. So we go to question 1 from Mr. Angle to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Angel, for your question. From the beginning of this process, the Council have pledged to support the school financially during any transitional period up to any transfer of the school to the new school site and the establishment of any new school building, subject to any final decisions regarding the proposal. This means the school and staff would not have to worry about redundancy or sacrifice in education provision, regardless of the number of pupils on roll. The school will also continue to work closely with the Central South Consortium and their challenge advisors in ensuring the appropriate levels of support and expertise are available to deliver and develop the highest level of education possible.
Question 2 is from Mr. Pace to the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Pace, for your question. The Council does not take decisions lightly, nor has it rushed through any process. The first edition of the Code came into force on the 1st of October 2013 and applied in respect of all school organisation proposals published by way of statutory notice on or after that day. The second edition of the Code came into force on the 1st of November 2018 and comes into effect immediately, subject to any proposer having commenced consultation before the 1st of November 2018. The proposal must be published and determined in accordance with the first edition of the Code. The Council commenced its first consultation long before that date in March 2018 and the second in May 2018. This proposal is a regulated alteration. The second edition of the Code establishes a procedural presumption against the closure of rural schools.
Question number 3 is from Dr. Barrett to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Barrett, for your question. While the change of the intervention rate is welcome, it does not increase the overall funding element available to the Council's Band B programme. The fundamental aim of the school organisation, planning and capital investment has not changed, which is to ensure the right schools are in the right places and that the proposals are reflective of the Welsh Government's national mission for education in Wales.
Question number 4 is from Dr. Barrett to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Barrett. The Vale of Glamorgan's Band B Strategic Outline Programme is reflective of anticipated demand and match funding primarily via Section 106 agreements stemming from new developments within the Vale of Glamorgan. Band B of the 21st Century Schools Programme is set to span a minimum of 5 years from April 2019. Proposals for Band C and D of the programme and any possible implications for existing schools have not yet been established, and therefore it's not possible to provide any specific information other than those on the schemes which have already been announced as part of the Band B programme.
Question 5 is from Dr. Barrett to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Barrett, for your question. The Council's pupil yield calculation is contained within the Council's supplementary planning guidance and derived from census data of householders in the Vale of Glamorgan. There is no recognised national formula for calculating pupil yield. Estin recognises the authority systems as appropriate in its inspection of 2013. Periodic checks are undertaken in conjunction with other work routines such as preparations of pupil projections for schools. However, individual reports on these comparisons are not generated. The pupil yield factors are comparable to other authorities in Wales. Whilst pupil yield assumptions are by no means an exact science, the authority is satisfied the pupil yield factors used are appropriate for the school place planning processes.
Question 6 is from Dr. Barrett to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Barrett, for your question. As I previously stated, I confirm the Council will provide an additional financial protection to the school during any transition period, subject to any final decision being made. Should the proposal not go ahead, the school will continue to receive the special protection available to small schools via school funding formula, as is currently the case. The cost of the protection will be dependent on the number of pupils attending the school. The school would need to manage its delegated budget, as would any school, with the support of the governing body and council officers.
Question 7 is from Dr. Barrett to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council is satisfied with the legal interpretation of the School Organisation Code 2013 and has acted in accordance with it following consultation with Welsh Government.
Question 8 is from Mr. O'Hara to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I got Mr. O'Hare, so I'll split the difference with you on this one. The Council has a statutory duty to consider school organisation and planning to ensure the right schools are in the right places and that proposals are reflective of national policies. The aim of the Council Band B programme is to invest over £143 million into the education of pupils to support their learning.
Question 9 is from Mrs. O'Hare to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. O'Hare, for your question. An increase in non-denominational primary school places in Cowbridge will be considered as part of the Council's Band B programme. There are currently 4 community-maintained feeder primary schools linked to the Cowbridge Comprehensive School. Parents not wishing to access a religious Cowbridge feeder school for their child could therefore apply to a Bontvine Primary School, Llanfair Primary School, Llangan Primary School or Llancarmen Primary School. Parental choice remains the most significant factor in securing school places, with over 90% of parents securing a place in their first choice of schools.
Question 10 is from Mr. Parry to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Parry, for your question. The Council is proud and supportive of all its schools, regardless of their character, status or setting.
Question 11 is from Mr. Parry to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Parry, for your question. Cabinet carefully considered the feedback of respondents throughout the consultation process, and the points raised during the Extraordinary Scrutiny Committee meeting held to discuss, amongst other things, the outcome of the consultation. A number of Cabinet members, including the Leader of the Council, were present on the evening to listen to the discussion. After careful consideration, Cabinet made the decision to progress the proposal, approving the publication of the proposal for a regulated alteration in the form of a statutory notice. The proposal was published on the 5th of November 2018 following an objection period, including the date of publication of the statutory notice, which ended on the 3rd of December 2018. A report outlining a summary of the objections received will be considered by Cabinet in the new year. Each individual objection will be made available to members to consider prior to a final decision being made in accordance with the requirements of the statutory code.
Question 10 is from Mrs. Bletley to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Bletley, for your question. The issue of whether or not the school seeks to retain its name is a matter for the governing body. There is a process in place to enable them to do so, if they choose so. I would have no objection to this. However, I am not aware of any discussions having been held of that nature at this stage, pending the outcome of the statutory process, and would therefore refer you to the governing body. Generally, individuals put themselves forward as a representative on a governing body because they believe they can make positive contribution to the strategic management and development of the school. In my experience, the name of the school does not deter individuals from applying to become a governor.
Question 13 is from Mr. Rentwick to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Rennick, for your question. Any capital receipts received by the Council for education assets relating to Band B of the 21st Century School programmes are not applied to individual schemes to which they relate. They are fed back into the programme as a whole. The development of plans to extend and alter the school building at Llancarvan has not been undertaken by the Council. This option was not considered feasible for a number of reasons which are set out in the consultation document.
Question 14 is from Mr. Robinson to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Condition 23 of Planning Permission 2015 0031 out states that the plant shall only process waste wood. If this planning permission were implemented, and if the Council receives a complaint regarding a breach of Condition 23, it would be investigated by the Planning Enforcement Team, with a view to taking enforcement action if expedient to do so. To date, the plant is not operational. It would be inappropriate to comment on speculative action the Council may or may not take in the future in any future breach of any condition or Condition 23.
Question number 15 is from Mr. Robinson to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Let's get the right one, shall we? Turn over. And we are on 15, yes. In respect of Birth 31, the legal officer's response are not routinely added to the Council's website because they are subject to legal privilege. The planning register is not a complete record of the planning file. It contains those matters which form the planning application, such as forms, plans and supporting documents, and some consultee responses where appropriate. The applicant has indicated that they intend to make further submissions. However, these submissions have not been received to date. The case officer has recently chased up the progress of this matter with the applicant, and the matter will be reported back to Planning Committee in due course.
Question number 16 is from Mr. Clark to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for your question. The document available online is updated annually, and new actions are identified as part of this annual review. An updated action plan will be published after April 2019. Good progress has been made on the 7 actions identified for 2017 and 2018, with most already completed. An online engagement hub is now in operation. An internal network of council officers meets regularly, An Equal Opportunities Engagement Directory has been established, and new methods of communicating with community groups have been trialled. The other actions that are in progress and are due to be completed before April 2019. All the actions demonstrate the Council's commitment to public engagement and to developing new ways of achieving it. Whenever the Council seeks the views of Vale residents, we are always considerate of those who cannot be reached online. For example, the recent consultation on the changes to waste collections in the Vale featured public events held across the Vale. Residents are also able to respond to all the engagement exercises we carry out by post and telephone, and we always seek to promote this via the local press. In instances where we feel residents of a particular disability are one of the key stakeholders, we will also seek to engage with advocacy groups and the third sector to ensure the views of such groups are well represented. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 12. I have no urgent decisions under part 1, and same for part 2. I close the meeting.